Okay, I got about 7 o'clock. Let's go ahead and get started.
Sometimes you
Okay. We got enough seats. We should have enough seats. Are we online yet, huh? Okay.
Oh, go ahead, Mike, leave.
All right.
Go ahead.
I didn't know where those seats were over there.
They're right there.
Probably in somebody's seat.
Okay.
You're in Dwight's.
Sarah, you going to join us?
No, Dwight's sitting right here. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Tracy's sitting right there.
I visited with my neighbor.
That's why we're here.
All right, let's start. I want to welcome the, can you just shove that back a little bit? So, no, tip it back so you can see me. No one's on yet? Well, the only one that was on is here. So. She didn't tell me she's.
Nothing's going on.
Mike is what? Oh, okay. Well, let me know when they come on. If there's nobody on there now, I won't welcome them. Sarah, do you want to join us? You want to sit at a table?
Sarah.
Sit there.
Oh, you pay me.
Yeah. Yeah. Why should you have a comfortable chair? Get up there and sit in that one.
No, sit right here. Sit right here. Sharon's gonna sit there.
Ah, see, you wouldn't let me sit there, Gene.
What?
Nice.
Go ahead.
Nice.
You can sit over here too.
Sit with your new friend.
You can sit here.
I don't need you.
She's your friend.
Yes, you do.
All right.
I was the first one here, I just want to
Good
say
Lord,
that.
was it something I said?
The first shall be last, and the last shall be first.
Never mind. I'll let you do whatever. This is the handout material if you decide you're going to read it. So, you'll probably have to write as well, so that may be real uncomfortable sitting there. All right, let's start with a prayer. Let's ask the Lord to come down here and be with us. He's here anyhow, just to guide our conversations tonight, Lord. You know, bless us. Thank you for the tremendous gift of time that you've given us. Thank you for asking us to be stewards of that and of the earth, and just, thank you for bringing us together tonight. We're so appreciative that we can do that we can come together and bless you. We just pray that you open our hearts and our spirits. Let the Holy Spirit fill us tonight with ideas about how we can be better stewards of the time that you've given us, how we can watch over this precious gift you've given us, so that in the end it is something that glorifies you. So we thank you, Lord, in Jesus' name. Amen. And all the Lord's people said, yeah, God. All right. From last week, a couple of things that you remember. Let's just give me a couple of things that stood out for you from last week. Time stood out.
We all have the same amount of time.
We all have the same amount of time. That's a good one.
I like that.
Yeah, that was probably the one that disturbed me the most, Dwight, because I thought some of these people who were successful had more time than I did. There's a movie out by that nature now. It's called It's About Time, or It's Time, but it's set in the future where people trade off time for things. And then they die. I can't think of the name of it.
Yeah, that was cool.
Do you remember the name?
Yeah.
They could lose an hour of life, though.
Yeah,
That's how you bought everything.
yeah, it was with time. You had, like so many years, sort of like Logan's Run, you had so many years. And then, yeah. Okay, I'll stand right here.
Why?
You remember the name?
That young blind guy.
Oh, yeah. Owen Wilson.
I'll think of his name.
Yeah, if
Owen
Debbie was here,
Wilson.
she'd have it just like that.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, well, let's call Debbie and find out who that was. All right, we all have the same amount of time. What else stood out for last week?
That if we say yes to something, we're saying no to
Yeah.
something else.
That we're doing one thing over the other. By the way, Gene, I took your advice last week, and you'll see on the page where it outlines some of the key points a couple pages in, where I dumped do two things at the same time. Because, I like the idea of bull knitting and watching TV at the same time. Yeah, okay, so I said, yeah, she's right. For some things, we can multitask. Yeah.
Whatever that is.
Being a bull knitter?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll let you think about it. It'll hit you tonight about midnight. you'll wake up, slap Joan Code. That's what he was getting at. All right, something else stuck out from last week.
That, non-committals generally could be run by an ego waiting for a better offer to come along.
Oh, yeah,
And,
yeah.
people who feel guilty or have things like my friend is full, I ran out of time,
Right.
are people pleasers.
Yeah, people pleasing is a real strong driver for us. It doesn't matter, I see it over and over. It's one of the things that even when we talk about resistance in my world, it all comes down to that, being driven by wanting to please people, things along those lines. Other stuff that stood out for you from last week.
Stewarding your time.
Yeah, that to me was another big one. I never thought about being a steward of my time. I thought about it, pretty much in terms of my finances, which was where it seemed to make sense. But then, being a steward of the land that I own, and we were doing something else, you may want to share some of that about the land, Arthur Burke stuff, at some point. Maybe being stewards of the land, and that made sense. And then all of a sudden it was, geez, I'm really a steward of the time that I've been given too. I need to be more accountable and more responsible for that. Yeah.
Perceiving ourselves as being busy but being ineffective, like that man
Yeah.
at work that you said you spent the day with,
Oh, yes.
who walked across the room and to do something and
His
never
name
got
was
it done.
Ray.
Their files.
Yeah,
is
his
what it
name
is.
was Ray.
The raid files.
He was trying to encourage me to get him some additional help.
Yeah, you needed it, all right.
He needed something. It was not additional help. He needed to not walk across the room. The story, Mike, very simply was that we were working. He'd been talking about how busy he was. And somebody called him while we're at his desk, and he had to get a file to respond to this guy. So he hung up and he went to the filing cabinet, it's a closed file. And he never made it to the filing cabinet. Somebody stopped and said, do you want to get into this week's football pool? And somebody else was having a birthday party, so he had to have cake. And by then it was coffee time, and he's over here, and then he never got to the filing cabinet.
This is when you were there with him?
I was there with him, and he was telling me about how busy he was, and I'm making notes. I'm just watching what he's doing. And at the end of the day, he says, see, I told you, I'm really, really busy. He said, I couldn't even carve out the time to work on this claim. And I go, you weren't busy. And I described what he was doing. I said, you're just disorganized. Those were in my nice days. I probably didn't say it that nicely either. But that was what that story was about. Sharon, from last week, how was the video, or how was it online?
It was great, except my computer was flipping in and out, so.
Oh, okay.
But along with stewarding your time is tithing our time.
Tithing our time, yeah, that was something else we talked about.
So much of time.
Yeah, that I sort of left as a rhetorical question for people to fiddle with. Is should we tithe our time? Which means 2.4 hours a day. So that's something else. Anything else that stands out from last week?
And time spent with the Lord.
Yeah,
We were talking about, I haven't been spending time with the Lord lately.
Right.
With us all day.
right. He's with us all day, whether we acknowledge him or not. Yeah. Maybe Brother Lawrence, something along those lines. Other thoughts? Yeah, Tracy.
I think the motives behind why we say yes to something and no to the other was even more impactful than just that we have to say no to something else, because
Right.
there's some of us who would go to 4 parties
Yeah,
and get nothing out of it, and some other people would think, well, that's ridiculous, I'm not gonna
Right.
enjoy it. So the motive to exhaust yourself,
yeah,
I
what's
thought
behind
about
it?
that all week.
What's behind it? In fact, Chris has another story. There's a page in here about commitments. It's called Commitments and Promises. It's near the end. But she has this great story about an experience that she had years ago in making a commitment and how it sort of got out of control. And then, her anger went up. But that's her story. I'll let her tell you about that later. Any others that come to mind? It's her story and she's sticking to it, isn't it? Anything else that comes to mind from last week? I think for me, one of the things that still continues to be is I can't control time. I'd like to, but I can't control time. I can only control my use of it. I can't speed it up. I can't save it in a bottle. I can't bank it, I can't borrow some of V's, well, at least not yet, unless that movie becomes real. But I can't borrow somebody else's time. Everybody's got the same amount. How'd somebody once describe it, says, imagine they put $86,400 in your bank account at midnight. And at the end of the day, whatever you had to spend didn't roll over, it just, went away. And that's what happens with us. That's how many things we've got. Last week, the big things were seeing time as a gift, recognizing we're stewards and examining time in terms of the choices that we make in the moment. I think that was another big one for me too. The assignment for tonight was to sort of analyze where your time is going. I don't care which time management program you deal with, which ones you take, they will all talk about generally sort of figuring out, where am I now? How am I using my time now? What's it like? That's always sort of a starting point. And then beyond that, you're going to hear a couple of things. You're going to hear about goals. You're going to hear about lists. Make lists, prioritize, and have goals. And when you write your goals, make sure they are SMART goals, and the SMART stands for something. Specific, measurable, actionable, I think realistic, and timely is what those mean. That's in here for you too. You kept the time log. So tonight what I want to do is spend some time looking at helping you figure out where you want to set goals for the time, talking about what goals are like, give you some tools, because once you've sort of said, this is where I am and this is what I want to do, here's my commitments, here's my promises, everything after that becomes a creative exercise for you. Because, I went to a one-time management seminar, and I think I mentioned it, where the guy said, oh, have your secretary do this. And I don't got no secretary, so that was an unrealistic time tool for me. I had to look at some other ones. So, and the last part is help you figure out how you might want to create some of your own time plans, what you want to do differently. From last week, and you can see I made a little note here on the one that says, give Gene credit for getting me to change my mind, and the next to the last one. You can't be in two places. Now, maybe Gene can, but I can't be in two places. That was a big thing. You can do a couple of things, and the idea of multitasking has become more and more popular. But I don't know whether you've been reading about it, but in the secular world, for the first time in history, over the last few years, productivity has actually gone down. And one of the reasons that they believe this is happening is because of that, and this, and who's got a tablet in the room? If there's a tablet in the room, those things too. Yeah, these things, we now try to do multitasking, and we're not dolphins. We can't hold 11 conversations at the same time. We just can't do it. And they're now beginning to say maybe the technology has gotten to the point where it's hurting us a bit. We're always available. We're always there. We're always interruptible. Yeah.
I actually read an article about drones, and they're thinking of making drones for simple things like grocery shopping. You can just go online and the drone will just...
Yeah. I'd rather have a robot that would do that for me. Right now I got a wife that does it, so I'm not sure I need a drone.
Stop and Shop does it for you if you call them.
They had some good ideas like medical drones that
Yeah.
bring the medicine to hospitals from country to country, and some of
It's
them
gonna
were
be,
really good
it's
ideas.
gonna be a real
But others
nightmare.
were simply pointless,
Yeah,
to the point where I question our society.
I've been doing that for years. So, these are the things that you talked about last week when I asked about what brought you to the workshop, what did you hope to learn, what did you do differently and change. The bold ones were the top three. They seem to be the big ones, and so I'm going to sort of focus on those three more than anything else, maybe the fourth one a bit as well. But, in looking at those, are there any others that come to mind now that you've had a week to think about this? Anything else come to mind about what you'd like to try? Yeah.
Really have a vision so that there's something specific to aim at.
Aim at?
AIM at.
Oh, aim at.
Because I find that if I don't have something specific, I tend to kind of
Yeah, look at page 11 real quick. I think that might be what you're talking about. See if that sort of, that's the idea of the SMART goals.
Smart, yeah.
Yeah, in business, they've talked for years about Lewis Carroll's, I think it was Through the Looking Glass or Alice in Wonderland, the one with the Cheshire Cat. There's always that story where, the cat says, or she goes, which way should I go? And he goes, where do you want to go? He says, I don't know. It says, any way will get you there. That's sort of the Charlie version of that, but that's part of it. And, without a vision, without goals, without a direction, people perish. That's right out of the Proverbs. Cast off restraint is another way of looking at it. But that is one of the things we're going to talk about tonight. Anything else that comes to mind? Grace?
I was telling some people that I had a waking dream, which really stuck with me.
A waking dream?
A waking dream.
Okay.
I became awake, but it was very, when you had said there's a consequence,
Yeah.
it stuck with me and it
Right.
resonated, and I heard that, and there was something worked out my dream. When I woke up, I saw 3 price tags, like for clothing,
Mm-hmm.
and they fanned. And then
They were like a deck of cards?
yeah, and then, but there was 3.
Yeah.
And I was just praying, I said, Lord, what is that? Because it's really in correlation to a consequence.
Right.
And I seem to get the impression, and I don't know if it's my words, but there's 3 things that happen for freedom.
Right.
There's a price that you pay if you do nothing. There's a price that you pay if you take the easy way out. And there's a price that you pay for hard work to grow.
Yeah.
And you, in freedom, get to decide.
Right.
That does not mess around with truth or lie.
Right.
Because like in school, the kids have for health a continuum of wellness.
Right.
Like you make decisions, some lead to wellness, some lead to illness.
Yeah, no, I was going to the other page. Keep going. Yeah.
But the decisions that you make, like what you're gonna wear for that day, if you're gonna put your hair up or down, they don't lead to health or illness,
Right.
but you operate making millions of decisions, and if you operate with fear that you're going to make the wrong one, you're in bondage.
That's right. And it's called decision or paralysis by analysis. It's where people keep asking for more analysis before they make decisions.
So it broke
Yeah.
something off of
Good.
me. And
Good.
when you said there's a consequence for every decision that you're making, God clearly said, He set this up that you have to choose
Right.
until you die.
Yeah.
And you're not wrong
Right.
if you don't want to go to college for 8 years, and you're not wrong if you want to go to community college, but
And you want to be a doctor.
it's a different outcome. It's what
That's
you're
right.
willing to pay.
That's right. One of the pages in here, I think it's the one with commitments and promises that has a subtitle that says count the costs. You always have to count the costs. Jesus even said, who would go into battle without counting the costs? We look at that stuff and we count the costs. By the way, this is an aside about decision making. We're not going to do a lot with that tonight, but have any of you ever read a book called Future Shock? It was written about 1970, 71, Alvin Toffler. Yeah, I know, you weren't born yet. Okay, anyhow, it was probably, about 100 years ahead of its time. And he talks in there about decision stress. And this is something, sometimes I talk about this in the workshops as well. I'm just going to throw it in real quick. And he says, sometimes what happens to us, he says, we have routine and non-routine decisions we make every day. I get up in the morning, I know the first thing I'm going to do. I'm going to go, make one of those sounds. Get out of bed, hit the bathroom, put on some water for tea. These are all, it's programmed. They're very routine kinds of things. So that's one kind of decision. The other kind of decisions that we have to make during the day have to do with non-routine or non-regular kinds of decisions. And this might be something like, I want to carpet the house. We just put in a pathway. I want to put in a pathway. These are not regular kinds of decisions. They require a little bit more thinking, a little bit more study. And what Toffler was getting at is that if we have too many non-routine decisions, too routine decisions, it'll stress us out and we won't be able to move forward. And the other half of that is if we have too many routine decisions, we'll become bored and potentially self-destructive.
Well, I'm certainly not bored.
Two guys that I worked with, one of them's life was like that. Yeah, you're probably more in a almost stressed because I've got too many non-routine decisions. And, but this guy was, he had, they call it plateauing. He had been in business for a good number of years. I knew him, had worked with him, good friend. And he had gotten to a point where everything was so routine, he was bored at work, and he used to do things like start arguing with the boss in the staff meetings. And I don't mean challenging things, I mean vehemently going after him. And his boss said, I think maybe I'm going to have to fire Dave. And we talked about what was going on and recognized that his balance was out of balance. So he changed his job around for him and kept him, and as far as I know, he retired from there. And another guy was just absolutely paralyzed because he didn't learn how to make all these routine decisions before he got to this job. And now he's in this job and he was completely lost. He didn't know how to make very, very simple decisions that anybody at that point should have been able to make. And he finally left the company in frustration. So that's all part of the stress. But Toffler talks about that in the book. The whole book is about our adaptability to change, and is there a threshold beyond which we can't go? Because we used to say we're all adaptable to change. It does play into this because as you go through some of this, you may want to start changing some of the choices that you make, and they may not be routine. You may have to spend a few more minutes looking at the consequences, counting the costs, what happens in the short run, what happens in the long run if I make this decision. By the way, did anybody ever come on? Okay. Who have we got? We don't know who it is. All right, if you think Mike is watching this thing? Do you think this might be Coach? It could be Coach. Coach, if it's you, text Chris or me. I've got my phone here. Text either one of us. We're actually on about page 3 of the handout that you should have there. And if you have any questions or whatever, Chris is sitting nearby. You can either text her, or I think you can call it up on the screen. Okay, so you just text her or text me, and we'll pick up your questions. So if you're not the coach, then ignore all that. So, no, welcome. Same thing's going for you. So, might be Sue. Sue is supposed to be online tonight too. Dan Sue. So Sue, if it's you, of course you know you can text in.
Yeah, the
Anything else you want to add? The AMAT is a good one. I've got to have a target. Think of it that way. I have one quick story thinking about AMAT. Was once asked a question, said, suppose that we had a target, we had a new pistol we were testing out, we had the pistol locked down in a vise and it was aimed at the target, and we pulled the trigger and the bullet hit at about 8 o'clock on the target. Said, what would we do? And, some people said, they'd, readjust the gun. And the others who were in management said would readjust the target. And the reality is you fire 3 more shots to see if there's a pattern before you do anything. So that's something to keep in mind. But if you're in management, your tendency is to readjust the target. If it doesn't seem to be going well, we'll just readjust it, extend it or whatever. All right, so that's what we're going to hit tonight. The next page is where I really want to start talking about things. And this was the one that says you get to choose. There's no penalties at all. You get to choose. Free mat here. You got paper to write on. What kinds of things in your assignment did you come up with? And your list may be different from somebody else's, but if you've got something down there, or even think about what are the top 3 things that you really feel strongly about in terms of how you want to use your time. What you want to do. What's most important to you? Who's got some stuff? Need a couple of minutes to jot down some thoughts? Yeah, feel free. Go ahead and do that. These are, don't worry about a priority order, just put down the stuff that's really important to you. There you go. Who's got a couple of things? And don't have to be in any kind of order. What kinds of stuff are important? This would be an interactive piece where people spoke out and said, "This is important to
Mine
me."
would be more time with the Lord.
More time with the Lord.
My spouse.
Yeah.
And, being able to have free weekends.
Free weekends.
It's
You-
kind of what I put too.
Yeah.
You know, same thing. You know, one of my friends, very successful in the petroleum business, has a real good saying is, we work hard, we owe it to ourselves to go have some fun. And he's right. You get into a routine, constantly, whether it's at home, at
Yeah.
work, you know, thinking about it, you know, then volunteering at the church or wherever, you know, after a while you just start to burn out and you're like, what's this all about? So you owe it to yourself to go have some fun.
Yeah. Some downtime. What do we do for downtime? Others?
Works to the same, time with the Lord,
Mm-hmm.
family, building relationships. That to me is really important. Planning, strategizing, working on my God-given vision, executing my God-given vision, volunteering, personal development.
Okay. Couple of others?
Exercise in there too.
Exercise?
She did it, that's part of my total.
Yeah, all right. I think everybody had, maybe I should have written the first one as time with the Lord. We're all going to put that down, whether it's, whether we want it or not. Well, we're doing this in church, we better do that. I don't know. Maybe we don't. So, but yeah, I think that was the same for me. One of the things I recognize is I'm not spending as much time as I wanted. Things like that. Any others? Yeah, Trish.
Education,
Education?
yeah, I'm always
Yeah,
learn, I read a lot.
right. Yeah, that's good. Reading.
Planning and thinking.
Yeah. Okay. Sarah, I'd just be curious to hear.
Tracy was next.
Well, maybe.
Yeah, that's all right. I'm just sort of curious.
I basically spend time with the Lord
Mhm.
covering everything.
Right,
So
right.
I put that as not last on my list, just
Right.
last on the list.
Yeah.
Because it's with everything.
Mhm.
I'd be working on tasks, I'd be in college with microbiology,
Mhm.
I'd be basically like learning.
Okay. Education's a big one right now. That's good. That's good. Baseball. He asked hesitantly which team.
I don't have a team.
Good, thank you.
College.
You could say the Orleans Cardinals. That would be a good team. Or no, they're the Redbirds now, I guess.
I just like to watch, I like to watch sports.
Yeah.
Soccer.
Cool. Good. Good. Some relaxing stuff there. Trace.
I pretty much did what V did, but
Right.
It's becoming more apparent. And the other,
Is that what it is?
the other piece is sleep.
Sleep, okay.
When I cheat myself on
Yeah.
sleep, I still have the same demands, but I have a minimal amount of ability to respond.
Right, right.
So the responsibility for this balance and this wellness is just becoming clearer,
Right. Who's responsible for it?
yeah.
Yeah. Not Dr. Oz or any of those guys.
Or not a doctor to fix
Not a
me
doctor at
as I
all.
go and
Right,
abuse myself.
right. Okay. Now, what I want you to do is on the next page is if you it kept some time logs last week, some different stuff, you can analyze your own, but I broke it into 4 quick areas in terms of looking at your week in 168 hours. And I'd be curious to see if you were to just look at these 4 things in terms of how you think if you've got some accurate numbers, that's fine. If you've got some just guesstimates, that's okay too. But one category is very simply, here I am, how many hours am I spending a week working? Now that includes the commuting and working at home. Now, if you bring work home and do it, like I used to lie to myself that I was only working about 6.5 hours a day. The reality is that the day was short. It was about 7 hours, I guess, but with buses and things. Had a 45-minute commute both ways on the bus, and I was bringing stuff home at night, and I was probably doing 2 hours worth of work at night. So when you added all of that stuff up, it wasn't 6.5 hours. It was probably closer to 10. So you think about it that way. How much time are you sleeping? And I made one for our ministries here, things that we do here. This wouldn't include like Sunday service, but it would be all the other stuff. It would be coming to this, it would be, working in the office. Well, you'd have that as work time for you anyhow. But, Adrian, it would be, and you have to consider the commute. You must have, 3 days each way?
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to stop off and get the,
Babies.
and then you take a look
Not
at,
that far.
and then
How long does it take you to get here?
About 40 minutes.
Depends on where she's coming from.
yeah,
Well,
Yeah.
today she was coming from Hebron.
right.
No, actually,
It's
I
a
had-
full run.
Yeah, because I was over here in Wilmington,
Yeah.
had to go to Hebron.
Yeah.
and all of that, so.
But when you begin to look at it just on an average pace of what it takes to get there,
But I used to
prep
have to
time as well.
leave in the morning to bring Dan all the way to Rhode Island, then I'd work in Mansfield, go all the way back to get him, and then come home, so. It beats 3
She's
hours.
just traveling.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's all
a day.
time. It's all time, yeah. And then the last one is when you've gotten the first 3 sort of figured out for the week, you add those up and subtract it from 168, and that tells you about what you've got left for life. And that's all the other stuff we do. That would be eating, meal preparation, any laundries, household activities, working on the car, things like that.
Plants.
TV, time with family, yeah. Doctor's appointments. So the life is sort of, if you look at the time logs that I gave you, you can break it down even more. See, this is what I would do, is total up everything that you've got and then begin to take a look at, if I compact some of these, where am I spending most of my time during the day, and is this where I should be? It's one of the starts to say, if I want to spend more time with the Lord, where am I going to get it? That's the question, where am I going to get it?
Yeah, because I can't find it.
Yeah, I'll find it for you.
I know one sneaky area is if,
If I get up at 3 o'clock in the morning.
well, no, if you prolong going to bed because you're playing and surfing.
Well, did that show up on yours?
Absolutely not. Showed
Oh.
up on Veronica's, not mine.
But those would be some of the things that you would do. That's how you use that page, as you build your own chart like this one, and you can begin to see, these are the patterns that I've got. So I'm sort of curious, if you just take a second and jot down how you think that's going for you for a week, and just to see how much time people are spending in places. School would be your work, your school day.
I do that.
Yeah. Okay. What kinds of things did you get when you worked on that? How much time were people working? How many hours a week are work?
We didn't do it right.
Bless
We
you.
didn't do it right.
Well, just even as an estimate.
No, Joe was looking at mine and he said we didn't do it right.
Yeah.
But you had to add, so you bring over your work to the home thing.
Right. What did you have for, on your work page? What'd you have, Trace?
Well, 8, 9. It's 6.2 on my timesheet, but then there's the commute and the getting ready for work
Yeah,
and the cleaning,
the whole-
8, 9 hours.
a day.
Yeah,
Okay, I need it for the week. So it's 8 times
5.
7, or is it just 5 days?
5, I work 5 days. But that's just at work.
That's at
not
work.
Including at home.
Okay. Now, how about work that you do at home?
Well, I don't do school work at home.
No, I'm talking about the work you do in the office or wherever. Do you bring any of that home?
No,
Okay, so that's what you've got. Does that include your commuting time?
it does.
Okay. So what else have you got then? What's your next big category? How many hours a night do you sleep?
7.
So 49 hours you're spending sleeping a week, right?
Yep.
And what else? Have you got one or two other categories in there that look like they were consuming a good amount of time?
The category of meals and preparation and cleaning.
Uh-huh.
It's 2 times, on an average, 2 times 7.
14 hours?
Yeah,
Isn't that what we're doing all day long?
I know, right?
it's just shocking.
This was meals?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, some could be
Does
quicker.
that include eating it?
No.
No.
Prep? Well, how much time, so it's probably what, about 2.3 by the time you put
Yeah.
eating in there?
That's right.
No, don't you know the wives, we eat while we're making it, so
I
that
know.
way everybody else can eat it, and then we clean up after them, and.
Yeah, this is probably about 2.5.
This is by a man's perspective, isn't it?
The other big one is the non-computer, non-work computer time.
Okay.
It's very easy to say
What's this?
2 hours.
So that's another 14 hours
Yep,
a week?
yep.
Sure it's 2 hours?
What is it?
It's
Minimum,
okay.
A week?
non-work
I
computer
get
time. It's like
non-work.
spider solitaire.
Well, no, it's not necessarily that. 'cause it
Okay,
is-
Tracy.
It is
Okay.
responding to
Emails.
Publishers Clearinghouse and stuff like that.
Yeah, okay.
That's a version of spider solitaire.
No, but I do a lot of, I do a lot of responding, or, no, research.
Research?
On things that I don't know enough about, like interior decorating,
Uh-huh.
other artists,
Is it related to the job?
my craft.
Your
No,
craft?
it's not related
Okay.
to the job.
But it's still time on a computer?
It's our ministry.
All right, let's just
All right.
leave it there
Well,
for
like,
now.
Hobby.
If you wanna know what to purchase, is it worth it, blogs, stuff like that. It's research before you buy things.
So it's more or less your hobby.
I don't know if it's a hobby, cause it's very painful.
Is your craft your
Could
hobby?
be.
Well, not interior decorating, and hiring, knowing what you could do by yourself. That's maintenance, upkeep.
The thing, it doesn't really matter what you end up calling it. What you want to look at is, here's this thing that's consuming 14 hours a week for me, 2 hours a day. This one may be a little bit low. So I would probably put maybe a half an hour a day more for the,
Yeah,
for eating.
you're probably right.
so what's that come out to?
I used to cook larger meals than I do.
17 and a half, thank you.
Sounds good to me.
It's,
Yeah, it looks good to me.
I used to,
Seems like it's 24 hours a day.
I was a slave.
But now she's been set free.
Yeah, that's right.
Praise you, Jesus.
And then watering plants, taking care of the ground,
She looked like
Mhm.
JP.
that's it.
Was that another big one?
Yeah, it's front and back,
You
that's
did?
an hour every day.
Right.
Just turned one.
Yeah.
7 hours. I'm just gonna make
No,
that
she's just
18,
saying it.
round it up. So if you start taking, we can stop here when you begin to look at what you've got. We got 40 hours for this, we got 49 for the next one. We got 18, 14, 7, yeah, 128.
So she's missing.
So there's 128 hours accounted for, which means that you have a difference left of 40 hours
Of life.
divided by 7. And it's basically a little less than 6.
That's her pondering time.
You should have about 6 hours a day left.
Wow, what a
What
life
about
you
worship?
Pondering.
6 hours a day.
Yeah.
You're well
And I,
Church is a whole lot more than 2 hours. for
Heck
you.
yeah.
oh, heck yeah.
Yeah.
Wednesday night
Oh,
and
yeah.
stuff, there
I,
goes
I
Sunday
didn't get to
night.
that, I know.
Yeah. Well, that would be another one. How much, because that was one of the big ones I had on there is the ministry time.
So you just don't have time for life.
Yeah.
Right.
So you've got,
No wonder I'm overeating and my neck hurts.
yeah.
No wonder.
Well, here's the thing that kills us though.
Driving to the store to shop and stuff too for
Yeah.
your
That
house.
takes more time than anything.
Yeah, no
Well, here's
kidding.
the thing.
It really is an eye-opener.
Here's the thing you want to look at. That's exactly what I want it to be. Is that if I start accounting for all the stuff, and we'll say that was it. I think you got some others in there when you went through your whole page and you looked at it, and you go, I've got 6 hours a day that I'm not accounting for. Where is it? That's the question you want to begin to look at. So what you can go back and start and refine this a little bit more and go, well, maybe, and my guess is that you're not working 40 hours a week. That's a normal work week.
Where's her sleep time?
My guess is it's more than that.
She doesn't.
7 times 7,
7.
49.
Sleep time was 7 times 7. My guess is that an 8-hour workday is a normal day that the employer expects.
She doesn't work an 8-hour day at her job.
Oh, okay,
It's 6.25.
right,
She works at school.
all right, okay. Commuting time, prep time, and all that other stuff that goes in with it.
Right, but then there's the ministry, it's 25
Right.
minutes, twice a week. And
And
then
there's
4
the social
hours,
time.
yeah, the 4-hour worship practice.
4 hours for practice.
In church half a day.
Well, you said 40 minutes, 80 minutes,
Yeah.
1.5 travel time roughly. Just round them up a bit. What else?
That's why you multitask while you're at church. You're painting your nails while they're doing.
You've also got Sunday,
You know, then you
Sunday
put your makeup
mornings
on
are
from Sunday
an hour and a
morning on
half.
Saturday night.
Yeah.
Sunday mornings are an hour and a half. You have to be there an hour and a half before.
7 hours, I think.
And I'm stuck in the middle between the transitioning to adult children and an aging mother. And I'm responding to other people's needs.
Right,
And I was sneaking in mine,
yeah,
and it's wrong.
yeah, that's what happens to us.
Yeah, it's wrong.
Is when we begin to look at this, and what you're talking about is your choices to give away. We take another 7 hours away from this for ministry. How much time do you think you spend taking care of people?
More than taking care of me. I think 30 minutes is
A day?
just great, taking care of myself.
No, I'm
ridiculous.
taking care of others.
Oh, yeah, way more,
An hour a day? It's
At
another
least.
7 hours. See what's happening here?
yeah. Yep,
Now we're down to about 4 hours a day that we can't account for, but I think if you were to, see, the idea is to go back and look at this and say, hey, how am I using this stuff? And do I need, are some of these out of whack? It looks like this might be pretty much under control, you might not want to touch it much. But I would still, because this is usually the place where people underestimate their time. I'd go back and make sure, I would check on that. This, I think, is good and healthy.
Yep.
7 hours a night, I think, is a good amount of sleep. It's what's recommended. The meals, I don't know, that may be low,
yeah.
because I think there might be some cleanup time and things like
It
that.
has changed, cleanup time. That used to be slavery.
Slavery.
And I just was looking into different ways.
Yeah.
having more time to, talk with Donnie when exercising. We have to do that. We're at this critical juncture and
Yeah,
we have to take these bodies for a walk.
yeah, gotta do something. Okay, so you start sticking an hour a day in there for that, or even 30 minutes a day, and that 4 hours a day is going down and down and down. This is another one. The non-work computer time is generally another one that we have a tendency to underestimate.
Yeah.
And we make excuses like it's my craft, my hobby, I'm doing research. I say that all the time.
No,
But you
I
know,
mean,
playing Rummy 500 is not research.
yeah.
I gotta
I
admit
don't
that.
do the games
That's my
as much
relaxed
as,
time.
Got a mask?
I,
I'm sorry.
I
Yeah,
look
you
at.
got a master, right,
It's not
right,
my-
right.
It doesn't come easy to me, the
Yeah.
decorating, but we are doing upgrades, just doing cost comparison. I don't find it easy.
Right. Right,
I don't find it fast.
yeah.
I like
Yeah.
Scrabble.
There may be ways and strategies to deal with that. By the way, one of the things I want to offer, and we can do it in a couple of ways. The workshops that we're going to go on next week were the loving your teenager on purpose. We have moved that into October. We hadn't had anybody register for it yet, even though we've been promoting it. We have some books to order. Yeah, everybody hated their teenagers. They didn't want to do anything anyhow. So that's going to be in October, so that means the next 2 weeks are open. Here are two possibilities. One, if anybody wants to get together next Thursday and talk about specifics, we'll be here. And if you want to work one-on-one, we'll be available to do that too.
Please let you know in advance.
Yeah, let me know. Yeah, just let me know next week. That's out there in Never Never Land too. Let me know before next week, because I'll block Thursday night. And if some people want to get together and work on specifics, because right now, what I've done with Tracy is begun to look through her stuff, and she says, well, how much time do you want with the Lord?
Oh my gosh, I mean, I do at times have whole weekends, everybody clears
No, how much time do you want each day?
at least 2 hours all day.
All right. Now, according to what you've told me so far, without disrupting your sleep or anything else, you have 2 hours available
A week or a day?
a day. This is the daily number.
Because I know what it's like to have whole weekends, just
Yeah,
to
yeah.
worship,
Those-
and
I
I
think those are
always
special
used to
cases.
do that.
I think those are special cases where you do that, where you go away. Chris once took a week and went away and did some stuff. But what I would say is, okay, according to your analysis now, the way you're looking at stuff, you should be able to take 2 hours a day without too much trouble.
Thank you, doctor.
Your numbers.
Now just fix it that way.
See, the thing is when you go back and look, because I believe there are a couple that are underestimated. This one, and this one, and you're caring for people I think is underestimated. I think this one's underestimated too. That's why you want to sort of keep track of these things. Because you say, if I want, this is where we get in trouble. It says, if I want 2 hours a day, I can't possibly get it. Because I am so busy, where am I going to get 2 hours a day? If you could choose 2 hours a day, what 2 hours would they be? Ideally for you.
Well, I know the morning sets your pace, it's an hour in the morning and an hour at night,
Okay, so you'd like an hour in the morning and an hour at night.
yeah.
That's what you would say to the Lord, I want to commit to being here for an hour in the morning and an hour at night. What hour? Now, here's where I want you to go. So probably around page 17, I think. I've given you some other work things that you can play with. One of them is a day at a glance, there's a week at a glance, and a 6-month planning cycle. These are your other tools. Tracy's going to look at her ideal day here. Yeah, okay. It's sort of fitting together.
What
Yeah.
page are you on there?
I'm on page 17. So this is what you would do next. You say, this is what I want to carve out an hour a day. What hour do you want in there?
I
See,
know what it's like to go to bed at
no, don't go there. What hour do you want? Stay with me. Which hour do you want?
Just pick an hour.
8:30 at night, 8:30 to 9:30.
8:30 to 9:30, okay.
Yeah. 5 to 6.
Is that the time you usually wake up?
I wake up at 5:30, but I can wake up comfortably earlier because that sets the pace for the day. The day's over at night.
Tell me about it.
I've absolutely got to start getting ready for work
Okay,
at
so
6.
on that page, the first step you do to making a commitment is write that down. This is what I want. I'm from 5 to 6, and 8:30 to 9:30. Next question is will it fit into your schedule? And if you're gonna get up at 5 and you want 7 hours of sleep, that means you gotta go to bed no later than 10.
No, I can't go to bed that late.
That's for her. She'd have to go to bed by 10. Does that make sense? You see how this works?
Yes.
Okay. What time do you have to go to school?
So it's a little bit-
7:15.
You leave the house at 7:15?
No, I have to be at school, so I leave the house at 7.
9 o'clock, so we have-
Leave the house at 7? So you've got 5 to 6? So you have an hour to get ready for school? Is that realistic? Cook breakfast, milk the chickens, all that stuff? Does that fit for you? See how this works?
We're not going to.
Yeah.
Okay.
See how that works?
I do. 3:30 every morning.
Okay.
Just so he gets back.
So then what you have to ask yourself is, as I'm laying this out, I want an hour in the morning and an hour in the evening. I have to leave at 7. That gives me 60 minutes to do breakfast, get ready, all the other stuff. Can I do that?
Yes.
Okay,
'Cause
that's,
I get it ready the night before.
there you go.
But
And
that's
you can
take
put that
away
into
from
the
your prayer
schedule
time.
as well.
No, meaning
Yeah,
I have stuff that I could just grab.
right,
Okay.
right. That's how you use these tools. This would be the day, this is the planning sheet for the day. And what you're doing is I'm actually jumping you ahead with some of this stuff, but you're saying, this is what's really important to me. And the idea is schedule what's important, don't schedule the things that you believe are priorities. Schedule what's important. Because people will talk about doing your to-do list, scheduling your to-do list. Well, that's a finite thing that only looks at stuff at the work generally, doesn't look at the whole 168 hours. So what I'm saying is take what's really important and schedule it. The other one is a week at a glance. It's the same kind of an idea, and I did give you a 6-month calendar in the back, and I think it's got the holidays on it. And what you would want to do with something like this, September, October, is begin to lay in all of the other things that you've got that have to do with time with the Lord. If that's the most important thing, it would be putting in the merges with Danny. It would be putting in, if you're coming here on Monday night, if you're doing stuff here, you put all of those in the days where they are. And then when somebody says, can we get together Thursday night, the answer is no, I have a commitment. That's the answer, no, I have a commitment. So, not maybe, not, oh, well, I'll see, not, I'll try. Yoda wouldn't like that. None of those. It's if I'm really serious about my education, as Ava was talking about your education, things like, if I'm really serious and I'm going to commit to that block of time on that Thursday night or that Monday night or upper room on Sunday, and I write that down, I can't do two things.
Yeah.
Can't be in two places.
So what it comes down to is you need discipline and commitment.
That's exactly right.
It's not being rigid because
Yeah.
I learned French.
And it's not being rigid, is it? That's
I
exactly
learned
right.
French because I did do the homework. I really did.
Yeah.
And she promised, if you do it, you will learn the language. And
If you do it, they will come. That's usually, anyway.
If you build it.
Yeah, if you build it, they will come. Okay, you see how that works? That's how you begin to use these logs. Now, you can, some people say keep them for 3 months. I wouldn't bother. Begin to figure out how long things take you, because that's going to be important later on when you're estimating stuff. Like I know, because I've driven it so many times, if I'm going to go over to Vernon Circle area, it's going to be a half hour. It's going to be about 35 minutes if I'm going all the way over to to the mall area. I know that. Chris thinks it's 10. We used to have these stories about how, you want to tell them about how long it takes to do things? Any stories you remember?
Well, I think I kind of shared it last week. It's just I have to pretend it's gonna take longer, because in my mind, things don't take as long as they take. Oh, that's 10 minutes.
Yeah. Everything
And
is 10
so,
minutes.
and it doesn't, like if I'll say, and I've learned at least to ask him, how long will this take me? He'll say, oh, well, that's, 35 minutes. It's not that long. Do you know what I don't include?
Lights?
No. Like, okay, looking for my keys,
Yeah.
getting in the car, driving up the driveway, remembering something else, coming back down the driveway, going back to the house to find it.
Yeah. Yeah. We all do it.
And it all,
Yeah.
and lights and traffic and, it's just better at that. And what?
Road rage.
Road rage.
Do you get disappointed a lot?
What, because things take longer? Then I'm actually learning because of, to do it, because he's taught me.
I would've
I
gotten.
know, I used to say, oh, going from here to.
Yes, I
Westside,
do that.
10 minutes.
I do
No.
that.
And so I started timing it, and if you time it like 3 or 4 times, you're gonna have an average. It actually, I have to allow 20 minutes, and now I've started to tack on 10 extra in terms of when I say I have to leave by.
Right.
So I'm actually started to put my life in like half-hour modules. It really only takes me 20 minutes to get dressed, put my makeup on, but I say it takes me half an hour now.
Right.
Because sometimes something will come up,
Right.
get a phone call in the middle, whatever.
Mhm.
That's helping me, where naturally speaking, I don't do that. Naturally
because you
speaking,
would
I
get-
underestimate what
And you
it's.
would
Yeah.
get upset because you're
Yes,
not ready when you
stressed
have to
out.
get it right.
That's,
Like,
well, not
things
her,
all over.
her husband, who's sitting in the car waiting. Things are like those.
You're a patient person, you
Yeah.
didn't get upset.
One of the other things I've had to learn to do is like reprioritize how I approach things.
Yeah,
Because I would get out and just kind of jump into my day.
right.
And then it's like, oh, I have to be here at 10 o'clock and it's 9:15 and I'm just getting into the shower. And if I hit any kind of a hiccup, I'm late.
Right.
But if I get up and I shower and I get myself all set and then I approach the rest of the stuff that I have to do, that I can leave, then at 9:20, I can say, okay, I'm leaving and
Be there on time.
be there in time,
Mhm.
and it's not a big deal. So I've had to learn I'm learning. I'm not
Right.
mastered it yet, but
The key to all of this stuff is actually page 6. It's the next one over. It says ready, aim, fire. And this is sort of the flow for what you're going through. It starts off with knowing yourself. This is the personal work. This is the stuff we did last week, getting you to shift the way you saw time, making some decisions about what's really important to me, recognizing that I'm a steward of time. This is a gift of God, and I get to make choices. And in the moment, that's the thing I have to do, is every moment I have to make choices. Sometimes they're easy, sometimes they're a little bit harder, but I have to choose things. The second part of that is what you did is the assignment, sort of where am I now? I've gone and I've looked at my time logs. By the way, if you want more of those pages, I'll ship them to you. You can, in fact, I'll send everybody 2 or 3 more of those pages if they want them. And you can simply change the categories to fit your own particular needs. Those are very general. But what you want to see is, because like if I were Tracy, I'd go, I've got 4 hours a day I can't account for. I think you can if you go back. I got 4 hours a day I can't account for. Something's wrong, which means that if I only want 2 hours with the Lord, I've still got 2 more hours that I can putz around and do something
Do
else.
what you use your computer for.
Yeah, I can use my computer more. I can play more games. Yeah, that becomes part of it. So,
No, that's gotta,
Yeah.
it's gotta be.
and I would say don't get too rigid in your timekeeping, doing the logs. In fact, sometimes I recommend to people keep it 1 day a week for 7 weeks. This week I'm going to do Monday, next week I'll do Tuesday, and see how it goes. What I discovered in my work life was that my busiest time was Tuesday morning. I got my most phone calls Tuesday morning. I even kept track of the phone calls I got. Tuesday morning was the heaviest time, so what did I do? I didn't schedule anything for Tuesday morning, just firefighting. I knew that the calls were gonna come in. So that meant I would block that time for being interrupted. That's how it set that up. That seemed to work out pretty well as well. So, we know what we believe, sort of what's important to us, we know where we are. The third one is, where do we want to go? And this is the goals that V was talking about. Talk about those in a second. After you've set the goals, what's important to me, what do I really want to do? Like Tracy says, I want 2 hours a day. She's done some of the goal planning already. I want 2 hours a day. I want it an hour in the morning and an hour in the evening. I want it 5 to 6. I want 8:30 to 9:30. That's my goal. Okay, and I want to do that every day. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, so that would be my goal, is to do this, to spend this time with the Lord. List making is a big thing. You'll see that. The fourth one talks about how do we get there. That's the good old planning stuff. Basic blocking and tackling kinds of things. Similar kinds of questions come out of there. What's it going to look like as we're moving forward with the planning? The fifth one is to do it, and the sixth one says, okay, maybe I need to just check and see how am I doing. Evaluate the trip, things along those lines. I want to get you started on this page, and then we'll take a quick break. I have a much more complex tool for analyzing priorities. But last week I showed you a very simple way. Chris and I were talking about it, and that's the one I want to talk about tonight. Think of the 7 things that are important to you. I had 10 down there originally. I think that's too many. 7 is a good mental number. So think of the 7 things that are really important to you, that you really want to do. Whether it's at work or overall, you could do this as a series. This could be in my life. These are the 7 things that are really important to me. In my work, these are the 7 things that are really important to me. And maybe work is one line item there. Now last week, if you remember, I'll show you how this works. And then I'm going to ask you to sort of jot down some thoughts there, and we'll combine it with a quick break. But if you remember on page 3, we had a list of 19 items. Remember that? Now, I gave you a very quick way to prioritize those last week. If you remember, what I said was, if you could only work on 5 of these, which 5 would they be? Now, if we were doing it from a longer standpoint, I would have said, if you can only work on 11, which 11 would you pick? And generally, these would have each been on a Post-it note, and people would have gone up and rearranged them, and then it cut the 19 to 11. The 11 then to 6, the 6 to 4, the 4 to 2, the 2 to 1. And as you're backfilling, what you have is your list of priorities. So I sped it up. I cut it down to 5 right off the bat. But that's what that page is all about. So I'd like you to jot down some of the things that, whether it's at work, just specify that these are work things or they're overall life things. But jot those down. Grab some more fruit, a little more water. We got that over there. Take a few minutes, grab a break as well. And pay attention to the, I'll get to the quote at the bottom later. But, first of all, come up with some things that are important to you. Sue's watching. Hi, Sue. How are we doing? Sure. Go ahead. They're working. We're on a break. Works from home.
So, she can sleep during the day, weekends, but she tends to get up late, and then decides her baby hours in line.
Works from home, has insomnia.
She said every day is different.
How many hours of sleep is she getting a night? Sue, that's the first thing I'd ask you, is how many hours of sleep are you getting on an average night? That would be one thing. You're not having continuous sleep, it sounds like, so are you getting 2 hours, 4 hours, whatever it is? And you can look at, I go to bed at 10. and I get up at 5, but I've gotten up intermittently for 45 minutes or an hour in between. So I would have simply accounted for, I would have spent this much time sleeping and this much time being an insomniac in that 9-hour period. Now, if you're getting up, if that makes sense to you, if you're getting up late, since you work at home, can you structure your day? Can you structure your starting time, your stopping time? Mine would be simply to slip the day. My office hours, if I were getting up late, I would say my office hours are 11 to 7, or whatever I want them to be, whatever makes sense. But carve out that block of time. One of the tough things I had to learn, Sue, when I started working at home was I did not have to work between 8 and 5. My son actually got me out of that. He was about 4 at the time. And what I realized was that the business world wanted me to work 8 to 5. I could regulate my own hours. I didn't have to be there 8 to 5. I could go do other things. And I like to work early in the morning. I like to work sometimes later at night. So I would carve out the times, but those times would then be dedicated to the work. I think the other thing for people who work at home is to carve out a place that you go to, that's actually your workspace, as opposed to doing what I do, sitting on a sofa watching TV and working on a computer. You know, it's very non-productive, because my office is basically where my computer is. But, you know, now I've got a physical place, and I'm actually going to it and enjoying it more. Question?
She said, tell him, I said, great.
Great, okay, that'll be $1. Thank you. If you want the right answer, it'll be $2. That's how consultants set their prices. Pardon? You're cool? There might be some blankets in there. No? Thank you, Sue. That was a good one. I'm going to add that, maybe a section in what's going to happen to this is even though we're only doing 2 weeks, we are converting this to a short book. My next goal is to take this, add a few more words, and make sure that everybody gets copies.
She said that 9 to 5 was the best time for her job,
Right,
but she can sometimes switch.
right. When I was in the work world, Sue, one of the things that I would do is carve out times. I mentioned last week that I would carve out a half hour before and a half hour at the end of the day as my personal times. Now, there would be other times during the day when maybe I would just take an hour, like around 2 o'clock, you get that 2 o'clock slump. Well, I wouldn't eat a Snickers or a Butterfinger like Dwight's doing, but Dwight would. I just carve out a little bit of time and close the door and as best I could, or go somewhere. We had a library in the building. Sometimes it was even taking a walk just to get refreshment, just to be, you know, have a little bit more downtime. So whatever you figure you can carve out. Got to make it fit your work life. So thank you. And the offer goes next week. If we are here next week, I'll let you know. And if there are particular issues, you can send them to me over the course of the week. And we'll stream it again next week, too, if anybody wants to come. Okay. What's that? Okay.
With me, what my problem is I babysit,
Yeah.
Yeah,
so things don't always work the way you want it to
right.
work. So, like, for instance, my 2 weeks have not gone the same at all. Even as far as the parents coming in, it didn't work out. Like,
Yeah.
one day they came in at 6:15, the next day they didn't come in until 6:45, but they're supposed to come in at 6:30.
Right.
So, and then one day they're telling me that they're coming in at 1 o'clock and they come in at like 2 o'clock, or one day they're telling me that they're supposed to come in at 4, or
Right.
4:45, and they come in at 4, which was nice, but, you know, it's like, it
It's
disrupts
lopsided.
your day.
Yeah, it does.
And
It's
that's
in
the
a
problem
regular
I
day.
have with
Yeah.
being able to take time for
Yeah.
what I need. you
Is
know.
that only one person or many
I have
people?
two.
You have two?
Two different people.
Are they both like that?
Well, well, what happens is, their brother and sister that I babysit
Yeah.
for, I babysit for the brother and sister, so the kids are cousins. So, one of them will bring them in the morning and the other one picks them up
It's
in the
probably not,
afternoon.
yeah. Right.
And they're teachers, so they don't always, their schedules don't always work out the way they want either,
Yeah.
I think. So, like yesterday, I was dumbfounded because it was the complete opposite. People that were supposed to pick them up, ended up picking them up, and it was like, okay, so is Ashley picking the other one up, or are you taking them both, or, you know?
What's the deal? Yeah.
Yeah, so she says, oh, nobody told you? No,
Yeah.
no, I'm just here.
Yeah,
You know, so it's, for me to be able to make time, I kind of have to go with the flow and then
right.
make my own time when I
Yeah.
get a chance.
Do they ever come after 4:30?
No, I put the limit on it.
Okay. What's
They
your
have to be
limit?
gone by 4:30.
Your kids must be going, or we'll give them espresso
Yep.
and a puppy.
Do you know though, that worked?
Yeah,
Put them in a closet.
Give them a puppy?
you gave them espresso and a puppy.
No espresso.
No, I told them they had to be done by 4:30 and it has worked every time unless
Old
it's an
chocolate, yeah.
emergency.
Okay, so your end time is what, 4 o'clock?
4:30.
4:30.
Start time 6:30, holy cow.
And the starting time is
Supposed to be 6:30.
6:30. So this is your blocked time.
Yep.
This is your, what I call my Tuesday morning.
But it's every,
Yeah,
Well,
well,
except
doesn't
for
matter, because it's the
Thursday.
same kind of an idea.
Right.
Is that I know that this is gonna be sporadic. Some days it's gonna be a little bit later, some days
Right.
it's gonna be, will it ever be earlier than that?
Well, that's what I'm wondering. She told me that she was gonna probably start coming in around 1:15 now.
Is that okay with you?
It's as okay as it, but let me know, so I'm not wasting time.
Well, yeah, so all you do is you back this up and say, okay,
If she's not gonna come, if she's coming at 6:15, then I'll get up earlier and do what I have to do.
right,
But if she's not coming till 6:30, well, I have that extra 15 minutes to sit
do
and pray
something.
or
Right.
whatever, you know,
Right.
so.
all I'm saying is you can block these limits and you recognize that this is gonna be strange time. But it's got a beginning and it's got an end. And if all of a sudden they come at 6:30, you've got 15 minutes you can
Right.
continue to, they show up at 4 o'clock, you've now got 30 minutes that you can use.
Right.
But I think the thing is to make sure that they understand what the deal is.
That's a full day.
Yeah, it is a full day. But it's like my Tuesdays, you know, I knew Tuesdays between 8 o'clock and noon were gonna be chock full of interruptions with phone calls and things like that. So I didn't really try to schedule a lot of other stuff, knowing I was gonna be interrupted, and that's what I'm saying, but the conversation has to be around 6:15, 4:30. If this is the case, you know, I'm gonna assume the meter starts running, I'm going to be like a lawyer, I'm gonna bill you in 5-minute increments.
Right. It's
You're
true,
being billed 6:15 to 4:30,
right.
it's a long day.
You know what happened, this year, my assignment with children is all about health, and it's critical that I be ahead of the
Yeah.
clock, so to speak, and transition.
We did.
Right,
And I couldn't park and do things the way I did last year, and out of a mistake, because of the traffic jam, I parked in a different place and entering the building, and I can't believe my whole world is different.
yeah,
And I'm open to a better process, a new way of doing something.
right.
And that was really exciting, because it made all the world a difference.
Save you time, take your
Yes.
time, okay. Those are the kinds of things you look for. Those are the kinds of things you look for.
Like getting your meal ready the night before, so
Right.
it's ready, so
What
you
are
can
some of my
grab it.
trade-offs? But you gotta put that back into your schedule as part of your plan. We'll get at that in a second. When you went through the priorities, who's got 6 or 7? Who's got, what do you got? Adrian, what do you got down there? How many do you have?
7.
Okay. Now, here's how this would work. You would do this by yourself. but I'm gonna coach you through it. I want you to pick the top 4. Just circle them.
I did that already.
Okay. So
And
have
I
you
did
come down to
business
1?
Top 3, yeah,
Okay. What's your top 1?
time with God.
Yeah, it was sort of a given. What's your second?
Work on my business.
Okay, there you go. So, we'll have a test here. In your day, when you're scheduling your day, other than the time with the Lord, and that's on, you've put that on this page now, at the back, page 17, you've written that down, good.
Yeah.
Now, what do you have work on the business?
That I have, well, because
What time do you have?
I work with G now too, with
Yeah.
G.
Okay,
So
But
she
you're
has those
working-
same hours.
yeah, work on the
Well,
business.
Sort of,
Later.
I drive and.
Yeah, so you wanna
Well,
work on the
I
business.
had time with God, like Tracy, I liked the hour in
Yeah.
the morning and at night because it kinda like starts and ends the day. And then I put, this homework too, 'cause I
Sure.
haven't done that. Right
Work with the
after-
business is your second
The
priority.
business was at night at 8 o'clock.
PM,
Yes,
8
because I
p.m.?
had dinner at 6, 7 to
Okay.
spend time with
what's his
whoever's
name?
home
Yeah,
with me.
Dan, yeah,
work on my business and then at 9 time with God, but
yeah,
because at night it's hard for me because I don't go to sleep,
right,
so I find myself up doing something stupid like watching TV or
yeah,
on Facebook or
right, right.
um
Not doing the work with the business.
no,
Yeah.
but like till
It's not important to you then.
sometimes until 2 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
In the morning I'm up because I can't sleep.
So
Because
is
I'm now
the business really
overstimulating
important?
myself and-
Is the business really your number 2 priority?
Yeah, it is.
Is it
I
really?
know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so what are you gonna commit to then?
To work on that.
From 8 to 9?
Yeah.
So my goal is I'm going to commit to working on my business every day, 8 PM to 9 PM. All right, now Dan comes and says, you wanna have a glass of wine and watch a movie? What do you say?
He's not home, so I can do this.
Okay, all right. He's home one night. He says, you wanna have a glass of wine and watch a
But
movie?
he doesn't do that, so that wouldn't.
All right, you wanna have a
interfere.
Pepsi
Work
Cola
with
and watch a
him here.
movie? Work with me here, work
But I'm
with me
telling you
here.
reality here, that's
Nah.
all, that's all.
What would
Reality.
What would interrupt
What
you?
would interrupt you?
I'm calling you and I'm saying, hey, Adrian, you wanna go out tonight?
No, I would say no.
Okay, there you go.
That's what you
That's the issue. Once,
But because I don't like see my husband hardly ever, of
course
course
she'd
I
say
would
no.
say.
Of course she'd say no.
exactly.
See me all day. She's sitting down everywhere.
That's the other half of the test. That's the other half of the test. I've got that down there, 8 to 9 o'clock. That's the commitment of where I'm gonna work on my business
Yeah,
stuff. But every once in a while, something comes up. Dan's home early. He suggests maybe having a
I
glass
would-
of
I
wine,
would
watching a movie.
move time
You'd move
around
it.
for him.
Exactly. You can control the use.
Yeah.
But the casual call that comes in, the desire to go play the game or surf or things like that, you gotta really press that aside. I've made a commitment before God that right now, that's the most important thing for me, is to work on my business 8 to 9 o'clock at night. That's what you're saying is your number 2 priority is. And then 3 would be on there as well, wherever that goes. The idea is schedule the stuff that's important to you, not the to-do list. And then you can work it through the rest of it as well. Does that make sense?
Okay, I got a question for you.
Sure. I want you to read what's in the banner at the bottom. Yeah, I will. Go ahead.
My question is, okay, you have a prior commitment, and something comes up that you'd really like to be involved in, but you already committed to this. So, and both of them seem pretty important in your life. So which one, what do you do?
First, you start by erasing the board, and it gives the guy in the front time to think. Chris, what page is that in there on the commitments?
9.
Okay, go up to page 9. We might as well jump there. I think this is, I probably take these out of sequence anyhow. I have a commitment. There's one in place. What's another word for a commitment? Yeah, it's also, think of it this way, it's a promise. I've given my word.
blood of the animal.
Yeah, I've stepped in the blood of the animal. I've a slit wrist now and all that stuff. The thing is I made a promise to someone about this commitment, and this happens a lot. And I'm just gonna be real snotty and call it a better offer comes along. And the question is what do I do? Here's the ugly way of thinking. Do I keep my promise to Charlie? Or do I call Charlie up and say, you know, I've had a better offer, I'm gonna go ahead and do that?
Well, certainly wouldn't say something like that.
I know.
Make all kinds
Not
of
to Charlie
excuses.
anyway.
Yeah,
He'd be so offended.
yeah, that's right. I'd be crushed.
No, I guess I would keep my commitment, my first commitment.
Yeah, I think that's what it's all about. Chris, you wanna talk about, you know, this is an important page, that's why I'm gonna slip
But
over.
nobody repeated that on the thing, so.
Well, we're living in a time where people do
No,
not
she-
keep commitments.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, Sue, the question was, if you didn't hear it, Jean raised the issue of I've got a commitment. Something else comes up that I think I might like to do instead of.
But both seem important.
But both seem important. Which one do I do? So the way we framed that was looking at, if you think of the word commitment, as I have made a promise to someone, I have given my word. That sort of intensifies it. Now, something else has come up, also important. Which one do I do? You have to choose which you're going to keep. And in terms of integrity, it might be the one you committed to right up front. That's the way I would think about it, is about the integrity.
Yeah.
Am I a person who keeps their word?
I know, that was my
Yeah.
first thing when you said promise. So
Yeah.
Yes.
See,
That hit.
remember, words will create. The words you choose will shift the way you think about this stuff. Changing a commitment seems to be pretty easy. Changing a promise is a little
Yeah, it's
bit
a little
harder.
different. Yeah.
Questioning, am I willing to keep my word, that makes it even.
Exactly.
Yeah, so think of it that way. A commitment is I'm keeping my word to do this thing. So I don't enter into it casually. Honey, go ahead.
Yeah, a couple of
This is the
things.
story I was telling you about earlier.
Well, just a couple of things before that. One is that what if, even just us, just in this room, we became known for always keeping our word? I mean, that's a goal in my life. And if I can't keep a promise that I've made to somebody, I go back and say, you know, I told you I was going to do this and I'm really sorry. So that's a path I'm on. I'm not good at it yet. But we live in a culture where your word is no longer your bond, where your word doesn't really mean anything. Because you sign on this form and you say, yes, I'll pay this car payment every month for the next 3 years, and you don't. Or, you know, it's just on all levels. Yes, I'll be faithful to you till death do us part, and then you're not. You know, so I think in small things, if we begin to have just the mindset, I better not say yes, like the other day, I'm going to tell a story about V. I asked V about something. I loved your answer. Say, I'll get back to you. I want to run it by Rob.
Great answer.
I'll get back to you is a really good answer. If nothing else, it gives you time to think, okay. Or like for me, I would talk to him, say, you know, they want me to do this at work, and I didn't say yes yet because I really, you know, and talk it out. So let me get back to you. And you can say, I'll get back to you by tomorrow. That's a really good answer. Another thing about commitments, it's called the 10-10-10 principle. 10 standing for 10 minutes, 10 standing for 10 days, and 10 years. And the story goes that there was a woman who was at work, and her son was going to be playing a football game that was like for a championship that afternoon. And she had planned to leave work early so she could get home and be at his game. Well, the boss comes into the office and says, I need you to, you know, work on this project. Can you stay till 5? And she realizes if she says yes, she is going to miss her son's game. And she had already told him, I'm going to be at your game. So the way she evaluated it was, in 10 minutes, if I say no to my boss, he will be mad at me. In 10 days, he may still be mad at me, but he probably will have forgotten it, because I'm pretty good, I'm pretty reliable at the job. In 10 years, I may not even be working here, so that doesn't matter. Now let's look at it from the little boy's point of view. In 10 minutes, if he finds out I'm not there, 10 minutes after he finds out I'm not there, how's that gonna hit him? Really hard. And in 10 days, he's gonna be developing this attitude, I'm not really on mom's list. And in 10 years, now granted it's only one game, but in 10 years, he may have cultivated that hurt. I thought that was a great principle. Like this decision I'm making right now, the people involved, in 10 minutes, is anybody really gonna care? Or is there one person who will really be impacted by my decision? It was just a way to look at it, and I thought that was really cool. The story I have is, a number of years ago, I was involved in a school play. I was helping to put it on the play for my kids where they went to school. And I had offered, the woman that was heading it up and directing it and all had come to me and she said, will you help design and build the set? Love that. That's just right in my neighborhood. That's great. So we started out, we worked on designs, and, the hours were accumulating, but this was the whole school project, as, my daughter was in it, and all this. But then as time went on, and I think maybe it was like a 3-month period that we were going to be doing this play. They were doing rehearsals and learning the music and all that. And everybody I knew was involved in it. Costumes, everything, okay? But then as the weeks went on, she would come back to me and say, oh, would you, we didn't talk about this, but could we have this too? And okay. Another week would go by, and something else would be added. And it just kept getting added to and added to and added to. And I was so stressed out. I mean, I wasn't sleeping, eating. I was fighting with him. It was just like a nightmare time. When I get super stressed and everything's on overload, that's what it was like. All because I wanted to please this woman. That's really all it was about. Yeah, you could say, well, it was my kid's school. I want to get... But no, I wanted her to think well of me. So finally, it was just like a week before the performance, and she came, and here I am with a couple of kids, and we're working on these huge flats, and I'm so tired. And she asks me for something else. And I had already decided in my mind, I will never do this again, because it just got out of control. So she came and asked me, and I said, and I was inside, I was really scared to say no to her. She's a very strong woman and all that. And I said, no, I can't. Because I knew what it was like at home. I absolutely could not do one more thing. And she said, oh, okay, I'll just get so-and-so to. I'm like, what? No, I didn't say that. But I'm like, are you kidding me? Why did you keep. You know what the problem was? It wasn't that she kept asking me.
You kept saying
I kept saying yes. And that was when we started talking about all of this, I'm like, do what Veronica did. If somebody asks you commitment, say, let me get back to you on that. Exactly. Even if it just gives you a breather. The little Christianese is, I got to pray about it. Yeah. Oh, maybe there are things that you do need to pray about. But it was, let me just, I got to check your calendar. I mean, that's a legitimate
My biggest thing is I have to talk to Joe about it.
Yeah. That's so good to say that. And then that gives you a little okay, this is probably going to be more than I can do, and, to look at your commitments. Then the second thing is be clear about what it is you're committing to, and check your own heart. If you just keep going and going and going, why are you doing this exactly? I mean, it was beautiful. Everything worked out great for the play, but I learned my lesson is that to say no when I really want, actually, to be honest, I didn't want to say no. I didn't want to say yes in the first place. I really didn't. I just didn't. It was something I loved to do and everything, but I knew it was going to take a lot of time. But I said yes, and I kept saying yes, and I didn't have the courage to say no. But I learned. And actually, as we're sitting here, I got a text from somebody at work. Can you work tomorrow afternoon?
Same lady.
again?
No, this is somebody else.
It happened last week too.
No, sorry. Yeah,
Yeah, it was, that happened last week as well.
So, no, I said no.
Yay, Chris.
You can say no.
Well, you have a commitment at 5 o'clock.
I know, too. and that's where I started to go, let's see, okay, she only lives here, so then I could probably do, no, don't do this, you know. And there are times where you say yes, somebody calls you up, oh my gosh, you know, this has happened, can you, of course.
Right.
But when we have the ability to say no, sometimes we really do, and that doesn't mean we're bad. It means I've already made a commitment to the Lord about my time, and so to just run off as people-pleasing, as we've discussed, so that's my story.
Read
Sticking
your
to it.
quote at the bottom. There's a bold piece at the bottom that says, beware of mission creep. This is exactly what we were talking about here. Sometimes you hear it called scope creep in project management. It's, well, can you do this? Can you do this? You're beginning to experience it with, well, we'd like to come at 6:15. We'd like to come at 6. We'd like to leave at 5. Those are the things where you got to have the hard conversations and say, let's talk about what we've agreed to.
Right.
And a lot of the stuff ends up being conversations. Now, this page, just stay on the commitment page, because, you know, honey, you want to hit that quote at the bottom from the
What page, because I'm on 7.
We're on page 9.
page 9.
And the scripture, this is out of the Passion Translation, be careful in making a rash promise before God, or you may be trapped by your vow and live to regret it. And that's exactly what I did. Now, it wasn't a vow before God, you know, but it was a promise that I really didn't pray about and think
God
about.
was listening.
I remember so we're right around that time, or maybe after that, Charlie made a sign or had me write a sign that just said no on it, and I stuck it over the telephone. That's when you had the telephones on the wall, you know? And he said, when you answer, just realize no is an acceptable answer. Maybe that's what he said.
Or a complete
No
sentence.
is
No is
acceptable.
a complete sentence.
We also had a friend who would, when he would say no, and people will keep coming at you. They'll want reasons for your no. You don't have to give them a reason.
Please don't.
I have a
Just get in
commitment.
the habit of just saying no.
Yeah, just say no.
Yes, yes, you
Come on, that's
And
good.
finally, my friend Everett, I love this one, he would say, well, what part of no don't you understand? It's a little on the snotty side, but I liked it. Now, I do want to tell you that this page on the commitments, this is something that I really think you ought to take a look at, especially in terms of time management, managing the use of your time. Because as Chris mentioned, she ran into scope creep. I would encourage you, in addition to the time logs, to make a list of all the commitments that you've got in place now. I'll tell you, here's a story. This was a woman over at a little company here in Connecticut. I think they make jet engines. Okay? This was a 2-week period. And we'll put the other Sunday back here. A 2-week period. She had made a commitment to deliver a report on this Friday. We're talking here. We're having this conversation here. It's part of a planning workshop, time management workshop, things like that. And I asked her, I said, how long will it take you? What do you have to do this report? She started making a list. I got to do some research. I got to gather photos. I have to actually write the thing, probably 3 drafts by the time I'm finished. Anyhow, she's going on, and I said, how long do you think that's going to take you? And so she added all these pieces up, and she says, it looks like it's going to take probably in the neighborhood of about a total of about 25 hours to do that. I go, okay, and I said, what else have you already committed to? And I said, you've just committed to this date. She had just done it before we were talking. She said, you've committed to this date. She says, yeah, it's 2 weeks away, plenty of time. So what else are you committed to? And she said, looks at her calendar, and she says, well, I'm doing this, and I'm doing this, and I'm doing this, and I'm doing this. And we had, well, this was a 40 hours a week, so this was 80 hours that she had available. And what she discovered when she looked at all the commitments she had already made, that she had committed about 70 hours worth of work. And it was at that point she went pale. Because I said, can you do it in 10 hours? Can you do this 25-hour report in 10 hours? And she goes, no, there's no way I can get it done in 10 hours. This was the value of taking a look at whatever you've already committed to and laying it out in terms of how long will it take to do it. And I tell you, if you think it's going to take 15 minutes, double it. Just as a rule of thumb, take it up at least at 25%.
Just to give yourself that.
Yes,
that-
just to do that.
that's
And
what-
she says, well, you know, what do I do? She goes, what do I do? I said, well, here are your options. Saturday and Sunday, those are two. You want to work Saturdays and Sundays? Well, no, I've got commitments on those days. I'm going, you know, skiing or snorkeling or some darn thing.
Church.
Yeah,
Something
yeah,
else.
to church. No, this was Pratt. They probably worked for the church. Well, Rick's not here, so I can get away with that. But she had something going. This one was out, but she had Saturday and Sunday. She also had, instead of 8 hours a day, maybe doing 10 hours a day. Those were her options. She said, I can expand the day, add so many hours, but that's going to impact life at home with my husband. Says I can take up a Saturday and a Sunday, but that's going to impact Sunday, but that's going to impact at home. And I'm not sure I can do that. So what's your other option? She says, well, I guess I could renegotiate. And I said, when would you do that? If this had happened to you, when would you begin the renegotiation process?
Right away.
The minute you were done talking with Charlie. People will renegotiate. In a lot of cases they can, some cases they can't. But that's, you know, that's the case there is that you can possibly renegotiate. The last thing you want to do is renegotiate here. Well, you know, I ran out of time, I had all this, then we start making our excuses. Renegotiation, you know, in fact, I had somebody that called me recently and they said they were looking for November 3 to, what was it? It was like 3 to 8. They were looking for the first week in November. Yeah, this Sunday was a second. And they were looking for this, and I'm going to Prague here. And they said, could you be available to do a workshop for Bristol Myers Squibb this week? And at first I looked at that and I said, yeah, I could probably do that. And I think I said, yeah, Monday through Thursday, I could do that. Because that would leave me a couple of days before I had to leave. Then I realized I have a commitment on this day to some stuff here at church. This is the next Buck a Bowl day. I already know that. So I thought, Buck a Bowl, I will have to leave and drive to New Jersey Sunday night after that. Not sure I want to do that. So I called him back right away and said, no, I have a commitment here. I'd have to leave here, so these 3 days are all that's available. Lost the job. Because they wanted 4. I thought they were looking for the best of 2. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Turns out they were looking for 4 straight days. So I said, well, that's life. You lose that. Something else will come along. But I immediately called back and said, you know, I've gone back and I missed something. I said, my fault, I missed what was going on Sunday. I didn't look. Can't travel on Sunday, can only travel on Monday. Do it as fast as possible. Because I wanted to be true to my word, anything along those lines. Okay, any other thoughts on that? Because the thing is take a look at the commitments you've got. I just simply list them out. You know, who have I committed to do what for? How long is it going to take? And with all that's going on in this week, do I still have think of this poor young lady at Pratt. Do I still have the time is the time?
What happens if you don't know really how much time something is going to take? You know, let's say this is the first time you're endeavoring to do something, and it's just, you don't have a clue, or there are variables that are outside of your control and you don't know.
Yeah. Can you give me something that this might be?
I was doing the Hartford project, and I was transitioning into the food for this year.
Right.
I've never done it
You're doing the food for this year,
for,
okay.
for this year. So, first of all, everything is new. You know, all the pieces aren't in front of me, so I don't know all the little pieces that need to be done.
What were the little pieces? Just give me a couple of little pieces.
Okay. What needs to be taken out of, organizing things so that you know what needs to be taken out of the refrigerated truck, so you have it prepped for the next day. Purchasing ice, instead of a daily, process, can we do it once or twice a week?
Start in your car. Yeah. It's start in your car.
No,
Run it all night with the AC
you know,
on,
but
yeah.
just little things like that, additional items for Thursday's meal. What do the people who are gonna be prepping, Thursday's breakfast
Okay.
need?
Yeah.
Just pieces, little pieces that.
Yes,
you
now
know,
here's
I
the
don't think
key.
about.
You
That-
got the little pieces.
Yeah.
You got the, now, here's what you've got. Now, you know what the final result looks like over the course of this week by each day. One of the things is I put these on Post-it notes, first of all. I just write them out any way I want. Put them on Post-it notes. This is part of the planning process. I put it on Post-it notes. And then with this, this had something to do with a refrigeration truck. What was the deal there? How long would it take you to do that?
Well, if I had help,
Assuming you gotta do it yourself.
if I had to do it myself, 45 minutes, because I'd have to take things out of one part of the truck and bring them all in individually, load them into the other side, take things out of there and bring stuff inside.
Assume every one of these has to be done by you. How long does it take you to purchase the ice? Remember your driving time,
Right, that's what I'm thinking of, 40 minutes.
40 minutes. How long does it take to worry about Thursday's meal? I'm gonna worry for 15 minutes.
On the schedule.
No, by the time all the
Planning it.
pieces were together, it would take 3 extra hours to do all the pieces, if I was doing everything myself.
3 hours is what, 360 minutes? No, it's 180.
180.
180. See where I'm going? Breakfast? Another hour. This is how, what you do is, this is what you want. You want the small pieces. When I took courses and studied estimating, one of the things that we did was whatever it was, we would break it into small tasks, estimate the small tasks, add them up to a summary. And it always amazed me how close we would come. That's how they do it. That's what the professionals do. Mike, you do a lot of estimating. I remember when we were working on the pathway. It was interesting. I said, well, you know, how long, what's it gonna take? He says, well, we gotta do this. That'll take about 3 hours. We gotta do this. That'll take about, he broke it into little pieces. He's done it so often that it's just click, click, click. And me too in a lot of cases, something new, this is the process I go through. What are all the little pieces? And then I add in this item X. Always add in item X. I don't know what the heck what it is. It's gonna take time. It's gonna be that blip that comes up that I don't know about.
Well, all of those things that I listed
Yeah,
were things that I didn't know I was gonna have to do.
right.
That
Before,
they were
when you
just,
signed up.
well, you knew that things had to be done, but like certain pieces just
Yeah.
were never, those weren't the big things that were on a list.
Mm-hmm.
The big things on the list were.
Oh, of course.
You know, and like making sure you go get this is like,
Yeah.
So that was
get
just-
ice. So those little things became more of a focus because
Right.
in the process of being so busy with all the big things, all those little pieces had to be done, otherwise the big things didn't flow.
That's right.
Right.
Big things didn't happen.
Yeah.
Are you gonna do the food next year?
Did you keep notes?
Well,
I-
that was my point, is
Yeah.
do the next person that volunteers
That's
for your
exactly
job, the
what I
biggest
did.
favor you can do, and write down all the little pieces that they don't know about.
Right.
So they commit to the
Yeah.
right thing.
Exactly.
Sue,
So I
if-
have, yeah, a
yeah.
list of all the little things with
And
contacts.
Coach on that? Hi,
and,
Coach.
you know, like, we have to have for this, and you can't do this, so.
Right. Sue and Coach, if you're listening out there, the question had to do with estimating a particular project for the first time through. And Mike's suggestion was, and it's a good one, that you keep records of what happened so that you can pass that on to the next person so that they have some kind of an idea of how long it takes. I was on a board for a training society here in Connecticut, and one of the things that we had to do is we didn't call them job descriptions. They were just sort of, in this position, here's sort of what's expected of you. And we would include all of the things like this and the estimated times that it took. So that when people looked at this, they knew what they were committing to. Now, first time out, when you see, as a claims guy, I had to do this a lot, because when you blow up a plant, every one of them's a little bit different. You know, when you have an industrial accident and something blows up. Well, you have to, you break it into pieces. And generally the way that I would approach it is I would lay this stuff out with the big stuff and the little stuff, and then I'd go back and sit down and talk to somebody who maybe had been through it and said, here's how I'm seeing that I want to approach this. What have I missed in here? I'm coming to you with humility, and I'm asking you, what have I missed? What would you add to this list? You may have to do it a couple of times. This is where you build the trust with them and the integrity for keeping your word and things like that, and you get less item X's. Well, you're going to have item X's. They're going to be the things that come up and surprise you.
It's better the second.
Yeah. Okay. Does that make sense? Now, there were two quotes on this page that I thought were really important. And what I will tell you is this is the page called Counting the Costs, and recognizing these are promises that we made. I like the quote that says, integrity will lead you to success and happiness, but treachery, which is not, will destroy your dreams. And the other one at the bottom, both of these were from Brian's translation. And this, Chris had mentioned this, be careful of making rash promises. There are other places in the New Testament where cautioned not to, well, you know, blaspheme or take vows or swear. And we think it's saying dirty words. It's not. It's this kind of stuff. It's vowing something. You know, by God, I will do that. You know, in the name of Jesus, I will do that. Well, you better be careful. So this is a page I would very much encourage you to spend some time taking a look at, going through, especially you've taken a look at your time, add this piece on looking at your commitments and promises. The page we skipped, by the way, you gotta see the cartoon. This is page 8. We'll hit this one real fast because there's only one major message in this page that I want you to get. But I love the cartoon. Dilbert Scott Adams is in a real dilemma. He left the corporate world, became a world-renowned cartoonist, and now he's big enough that he qualifies as being a corporation. So I'm sort of curious to see how he's doing. I think his company's around $350, $400 million a year, something like that, with all their products.
That's funny.
The thing in here, work-life balance, I mentioned this last week. First thing to do is shift the word. As I said, words create, words are important. Life, work. The first word is the one we give priority to. It's just in a sequence of things. Chris and Charlie, give priority to Chris. It's the first one there.
Amen.
Apostles, prophets. It's always how I write it, is Chris first. That's in case of snipers. Snipers. Oh, you lead the life I've led, you worry about things like that. But, you know, if you look at that, and it's whatever comes first. Apostles, prophets, and I got the teachers down at the bottom, you know. I don't care what they say, there's a priority in the words. So the first thing in your mind is shift the way you say it. Life, work. It may take you a while because it's not going to feel right because we've said work life for so long. So you shift the words. The big thing that I will tell you here, you know, the priority is the thing. There was I'm on LinkedIn. I don't know how many of you are familiar with that. It's sort of a business Facebook kind of a thing. And somebody put up a question that says, you know, what should we do with work life? And almost everybody in there would say something like, well, until management does thus and so, nothing can happen. Well, why don't you just sign your checkbook and give it to management? That's all you're doing. And to me, the one thing I want you to realize on this page, your decision to balance your life and your work is totally yours. It is not the company's.
I have an
They can
example.
have all kinds of policies. It doesn't matter. It's your choice.
The office that I was working at, the owner had to come and work there for a little while because the doctor that was working there had left the practice, and, this guy, you know, it's, all his life it was always work, and then
Right.
his life, so I remember, it was at the end of the day, and I think I turned the answering service on, it was time, and it was like 2 minutes before, you know, whatever, and he said, he made a, you know, a comment like, what, you know, this is your life, or whatever, and I said, no, my life begins when I leave here.
Oh.
I have a life. I
Great.
said, I think you need to go get one too
Yeah.
next Berkeley. And he said, he goes,
You're fired.
no, he didn't fire me. He was like, oh,
Yeah.
like that. I said, so have a good night. And I left.
Right.
Yeah, but no, and everybody was sitting there like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you just talked to Dr. Berkeley
Yeah.
like that. But it's true, like you can, like that's where his mind is. That's why, and I'm not like judging him, but he has gone through a lot in his life because he's always put his work
Right.
first. So,
Right.
yeah, and when I said that to him, I was like, what? Like nobody, you know, everybody thinks according to him, everybody should think that you know, your work is your
Mhm.
your life, and I didn't. I said I have
Yeah.
a family, and
Yeah.
I need to go home to them. And
Yeah, after I moved into the home office, I was told, with no doubt about where they were coming from, that one of the guys who was not a boss, he was a peer, but he was at a higher level, he says, you know, you'd be better off if you hung around here till about 5:30, 6 o'clock every night. And I go, what would I do? I said, there's not that much work coming through. I get my work done, I'm finished by about 4:30, and I get out of here at 5, catch a bus. He says, it looks good. I go, to whom? Well, of course, it was the big boss, you know, and things like that. And I go, well, I've got a wife. We've been only married about 4.5 years. I got a baby on the way. I want to spend more time at home. So he said, well, you're going to have to decide. And I said, I just did. I'm going home.
right.
But the pressure is always there. You watch that movie. One of my favorite movies is Baby Boom. I don't know whether you've ever seen that.
Oh,
Love it.
I'd suggest watching Two-Time Management. That's one. The other one is Hook with Dustin Hoffman.
yeah.
That's another good one. But they have to do with, you know, what's important. And when you saw her life in the beginning of Baby Boom, the work consumed everything. 120 hours a week.
Tiger lady.
Tiger lady. And then once the kid came, it became different. And she recognized she could have it all if she decided how she was going to balance her life, not the corporation. If you wait for the corporation 6 minutes, then you'll die. Okay. We're not going to get through all of this, so I'm going to give you one other really important page.
Prioritize.
Yeah, we did prioritize. I'm prioritizing. The one that I think is also a really key page, the planning stuff. Most of you, my guess is you've been through some kind of a planning process already. But look at page 12. Beyond page 12 are a couple of articles I thought you might be interested in reading. I just included those for you. Sometimes in the conversations we want to have, we don't have them. We back off. We say, maybe, I'll try, I'll see what I can do. We waffle. We become a little passive in the way we deal with stuff. And what these two things are there a series of questions for you to help you get clear about what's going on. And the first question says, what am I dealing with? And do you have an example of having gone through this? I know you have one from recently. Just think about it for a second. I'm thinking about it too as I'm reading this. You always start off by just simply write this down. Who or what am I dealing with? Who's involved? What's the baggage we have between us, if there's any? Do we have any past history, any history? And so here's the situation. Then what I want to ask is, what are they doing? What are the other people who are involved in this situation, what are they doing? And the third question is when they do that, what do I do? How am I handling that? How am I responding to it? Those three can be eye-opening. I'll give you an example. This is from the business world, but not sure if you thought it was? Okay. This is a guy that I worked with. He had his situation is that he was constantly being called by headquarters because there were late reports, unfinished reports, and the big thing was late, and they were getting a lot of complaints from customers. So his idea was they needed this program, the time management program. And so I asked him, I said, okay, so you've got complaints from customers, you've got complaints from headquarters, things are late. I said, who's involved? What are your guys doing and gals? And he says, well, you know, they're coming in a little bit late. They tend to go out and have long lunches. They spend a lot of time in each other's offices talking back and forth. And I said, well, how do you handle that? When you see that happening, what do you do? He says, well, to be quite truthful, I go back in my office and I slam the door. I yell at God through the ceiling. And when I interviewed them, I said, when something's wrong, how's Lowell handling it? And they go, well, he goes in his office and he slams the door. And we hear him yelling at God through the ceiling. And I said, why is he doing that? You know, we don't know. He's never told us. So with those three, and that last one is how's it working? How do you feel about that? And he goes, that's really not working. See, he believed in his heart that his job was to take the pain, was to protect them from the real world. He thought he was a good, benevolent manager. He protected them. But in his protection, they didn't know they were late. They didn't know they were being criticized. They didn't know any of this was going on. So if we had just done a time management program, do you think it would have been very effective? No, it wouldn't have been. We started with True Confessions, and he basically did this in the opposite order. He says, here's what's been going on, and it's really not working. This is what I've been doing. He says, when you guys are doing this, you know, then the complaints are coming. And they were a little upset with him for not telling him, because they said, we should have known about this stuff. But then we went on and talked about a couple of things they could do. This is a very good self-diagnosis if you're struggling with somebody or something. If you're struggling with them, you know, ask you, what's the struggle? What are they doing? How am I responding to it? My big thing used to be kicking the table over and, you know, screaming into the night. And then the last part in there is, you know, how's that working? I go, well, it's not really working because the relationship hasn't changed, sort of status quo. They're getting mad at me. I'm getting mad at them. Yeah, and so then the next part is, what do I think I ought to do about that? And that's what that is. That page is very powerful, especially if you think that you want to have these conversations with people. My boss always asks me to work late. Okay, so I have to work late. My boss asks me to do that. That's a situation, and that's his contribution. That's what he's doing. So how do you handle that? Well, you know, I work late. You ever tell him that you have other commitments? No, I just go ahead and do it. And I go, how's that working? You know, my personal life stinks right now. Everything is out of control. So once people begin to recognize what they're doing, they can make some choices around changing it. So that's a sort of a little analysis tool as well. And I think that's probably close to 9. Yeah, don't turn that off yet. Well, I'm not done. This is not the time to pause. The part that I skipped over, and I actually thought about this, because again, there's probably more in here than you can do in a couple of hours. Planning. There's a quote in there by Eisenhower that says, planning is everything, the plan is nothing. The process of planning, which is a combination of all of this stuff. The SMART goals, they're sort of obvious. Is it specific? Is it measured? Can I measure it? You know, is it achievable? You know, things along those lines. Is it realistic? Is it timely? All that stuff. That you just take most people aren't specific enough in the goals. That's the big thing. The more specific you are, the better off you are. That's the thing in there. The sequence of planning. If you want to spend more time on that, we can do that. You can do it one-on-one with me if you've got something like, if you were doing that again, V, I would say call up Charlie and have him, you know, just ask me, as Chris would put it, the 100 stupid questions. And he's probably got 112
Well,
by now.
when I was doing the contemplative class,
Yeah,
like I had all this stuff, and like, this could take 6 hours, it could take 20 minutes. I don't have any idea how long this, so he's designed enough programs, so I said, okay, so I wanna do this. He goes, okay, that should take about between 10 and 15 minutes. So, and each portion of it,
yeah.
like you were doing, like breaking each thing down, seeing how long it would take. That way, if like for you, like, if you thought you'd sit 45 and it only took 30, yeah, so that helps me then.
Okay.
I just,
Yeah, she just calls me a whole bunch of names. So I would like to hear something that either surprised you or that you realized in listening. Just go around real quickly, everybody say something, and then I'll remind you about next week and some of the other things that are going on. So anybody can start and we'll go around.
I'll start.
Mike? Yeah.
I actually did commit that I'd be home at 10. And
That's good.
But honestly,
gonna make it.
with this, I want to be sincere. Mike, you're excellent at this, at giving your word and
Yeah.
following through on it, or saying I'll get back to you.
Yep,
You're
he
one
is.
of the best I know at it, so we need to have Mike lay
Right,
hands on
rub
us.
up against us.
Yeah, no, that's awesome.
Okay, see you, travel safely.
how long does it take you to get home?
7 minutes.
Hey, me too!
Yeah, ooh.
Speed limit.
You'll make it, he won't. So,
He will.
I will.
yeah, anything, what stood out? What did you realize, what surprised you?
I don't know, come back.
Okay,
10, 10, 10.
10, 10, 10, it's one we gotta add in there, yeah. Yeah,
I really like 10, 10, 10 too. And I just thought it was more of a recognition. I kind of know what my time waster is in this organization.
yeah,
So it sort of inspired me to kind of make a list and
right.
kind of get to it and be organized. about it.
Is that at home?
At home, only at home,
Only at home?
totally organized. at
Fly
home.
Ladies, was that it?
Oh, Fly Ladies?
Fly Ladies, have
No,
you
no,
run
no,
across
no,
that?
no, no,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah, I heard about
That's
that.
awesome.
It's
Yeah.
excellent, yeah.
Yeah, she used that for quite a while, and there were a lot of things in there that helped. And, you know, one of them very simply is, the organization is, I'm gonna be in this room only.
Right, finally.
Yeah.
And I've been doing that
Yeah.
since.
You love yourself, right?
I still get the emails.
Yeah, Tracy, anything?
Yeah, I can see that there's a pattern of, I would accept more and then trying to figure out on myself.
Yeah,
Something happened today where more's on my plate, and I'm thinking about it, and I'm not gonna be able to do what they're asking me.
Yeah.
Because I won't be able to help a child. Like, other people are thinking of just plugging in people,
Right.
not thinking in the big picture.
right.
I don't have to take on one.
Yeah, no, you don't, and that's where the conversation comes in then. How do I have this conversation and say no? Yeah. With compassion, with dignity, with
Well,
honor and
because
respect.
it's costing me peace.
Yeah.
It's terrible.
Count the cost. David?
Well, I had the 10, 10, 10 on
Yeah.
that, but then, also the prioritizing again. Moving forward, planning
Right,
my day.
Right.
With me moving, I'm still unpacking.
yeah. We've only been in our house 35 years, there's still boxes we haven't unpacked.
So, trying to time for that, so.
Yeah, it's all the stuff she can't find and I'm not telling her about. Adrian?
Not sure.
Anything surprise you?
It don't make sense,
Yeah.
but nothing surprises me.
Anything you realized about yourself?
That I'm a procrastinator, yeah. But I think I knew that.
Yeah,
No, it made me, tonight actually, confirmed that I did make the right choice at leaving my job, because you can try all of these things, but if people aren't willing to see it.
negotiate, yeah,
then you're wasting your time being there,
yeah.
so.
As the guy said, well, it's Maverick's father used to say, as Maverick's old pappy used to say, if you can't beat them and they won't let you join them, it's best to get out of town.
And that's, yeah.
Thank you, that's a good one. Dwight?
I think this whole thing's been like confirmation for where
Yeah.
the direction I've been moving in. Several years ago, I had a real bad experience in a workplace.
Yeah.
And, my boss thought they owned us because we were salaried. And I was doing between 60 and 70 hours a week.
Yep.
and not getting paid for it.
Sure.
And then there was no thanks or appreciation either. So for the past several years, I've kind of been scattered and trying to gain back the
Mhm.
time that I lost there.
Right. Redeem the
So-
time.
Yeah, it's
Which is
kinda
scriptural.
interesting.
Yeah.
I wanna get back what I lost, all this
Right.
time that I invested into this, you know, and
Yeah.
so, you know, it kinda hit me hard realizing that I can't get back time.
Yeah.
And, I get the same amount of time as everybody else, so,
Right.
you know, I just, you know, it's time to accept and move on. The thing that experience did is it brought me closer to the Lord and
Right.
closer to my wife.
Right.
So,
There
you
you
know,
go.
there was a pot of gold
Yeah.
at the end of that, you know?
And he does talk about redeeming the time. In fact, JC, you know JC,
Yeah.
tells him more. When we were in Ireland, he had a word for both Chris and I about our next period of time being much more productive than the last 25 years have been. So that scared me, and I said, I don't think I can let that happen. So, but no, and actually, even since he said it, we've noticed a shift in some of the things that we're doing, stuff
Wow.
like that. So, and we're sort of curious as to what this next 10, 15 years is going to be like. Mike, anything?
If you don't want it, you can give it to me.
Thank you. I will. All right. You can take it too.
Well, you asked me the other day about, you know, what surprised me or what I
Sure.
learned out of it, and I gave you the answer that
Yeah.
I read most of it before.
Right.
All the
It's
books
nothing
you
new.
were talking about. And, just looking for inspiration. But, you know, the big thing that is hitting me again is just that it's all a decision.
Well, yeah. Bless you. That's what it boils down to. Is we get to make decisions. That's the good news and the bad news. That's great. Thank you, Mike. Yeah.
I think a lot of it is everything that you taught and stuff, I think I knew a lot of, but it just brought it back to realization again.
Yeah. Yeah, this stuff has been around for years. In a variety of forms. You know, we said that you have all these different styles that they taught time management and stuff. For me, the contribution that I feel like I made, or I wanted to make, was recognizing this was a gift, and that, you know, we couldn't control it, and we were good if we were be stewards of it, sort of shift the way we're thinking, and recognize that we're making decisions, promises in the moment. Just those little word changes. I think that shifts a lot of stuff. And then the rest of it is strictly getting creative about how I want to handle my particular situation. Because there are 8 million suggestions out there, so
Chris,
enjoy.
like, it surprised me too that
Good night, folks. We're going to sign off now, so we'll see you later.
doesn't mean that you're spending the time.
Yeah.
Like, you always have to be busy and doing
Mhm.
something. It's like, it's the quality of
Right.
how you're spending it too.
Right.
It doesn't mean,
True.
just because